All right, rolling along, rolling along. Now we're going to take a look at the protective subsidy diagram. And this story, guess what, my friends, begins in the exact same place, which is with the free trade diagram, the base free trade diagram. If you're not comfortable with the base free trade diagram, go back and watch the base free trade diagram again, okay? So, another protective measure that the government can do is to put in a protective subsidy. Think about what that means. Say economic terms backwards, they make more sense. It's a subsidy to protect whom? Its own workers, its own country, its own people against the invasion or the invasion of the same product coming from abroad. Okay? So we're going to build this thing the same way. I'm going to go a little bit more quickly than I did in the tariff diagram because the assumption is that you watch the tariff video. If you didn't, go back and just watch the first like 3 or 4 minutes of that video, okay? So what do we have here? Well, we have the free trade diagram, and where does the story begin? The story always begins in the same place. It starts with P1, Q1, and then the United States opened up its market to corn producers from outside. And as a result, the price dropped from P1 to PW. And therefore, all of a sudden, the market was operating at a level of PW Q2. As a result of that, all of these people who are corn farmers lost their farm. So, that's bad. So, what are they going to do? They're going to do what people do when they're hurting. They go to their parents and complain. Who are the parents of an economy? The government. What is the government going to do? It's going to do what they can to protect them. They could do a tariff. In this case, they're going to do a subsidy. Okay. So, but before we get to the subsidy, let's look at the damage done to U.S. producers of corn. Before it opened up, P1, Q1 was the total revenue of U.S. producers. Then the price dropped to PW. So what happened? All of these people right here lost their farms, man. Ciao. Go make something else. Go to the city and get a job because you can't make corn for the same price as they can in the world. So, therefore, PW Q3 represents, wait for it, U.S. domestic revenue from what? The sale of corn. What about the rest of the corn that's being sold out here at PW Q2? Well, that comes from world producers, right? So, Q3 to Q2, that revenue box right there, that is world production or revenue from corn sold in the United States to producers outside the U.S. Okay? Remember that because all of these people, right, are making money that used to be made by U.S. producers, and the government's going to come in and protect them. Okay? And the way they're going to do that is they're going to provide a subsidy, a handout to U.S. corn producers that will have what effect? Well, what it'll do is it'll take this price point right here and it'll lower it by giving a subsidy per unit or per bushel of corn to U.S. producers. What's that going to do? That is going to have the effect of shifting the domestic supply curve outward. Wow. Yeah, just like the subsidy diagram back in microeconomics, of course. Same idea, same exact idea. Don't panic at all, right? So what happens? This then, and I have it, like the other videos, I'm going to clean this up in a little bit. But this is now going to be S domestic minus the subsidy, right? Because this is an outward movement of the supply curve. Okay, now that's going to have significant impact, right, on who actually produces the corn and where the revenue comes from. Okay, so let's look at the next slide. So we'll clean this stuff up, and we'll be able to see actually what happened in terms of revenue for U.S. producers, and you will see that there's going to be a misallocation of resources, but it's going to actually be less than the tariff, and that's because the price of corn in the U.S. is not going to change. Okay, so where are we? Wow, we're at a much nicer looking diagram than we had on the last slide. Okay, here is the subsidy, S domestic minus the subsidy, and now we have some corresponding, what should I say, corresponding information that we can then use to calculate how much revenue is now being post-subsidy earned by U.S. producers and post-subsidy earned by foreign producers, okay? So let's look at the beginning of the story again. What corn was being produced by the U.S.? Well, that's pretty straightforward, right? Before the subsidy, this was produced by people from the U.S., A and B. What about post-subsidy? Well, post-subsidy, actually what happened, and this is really interesting, and this is where you got to look. What happened to the price of corn in the United States? Did it go up? No, it didn't go up. It stayed at PW. Corn is still being sold in the marketplace. If you're a consumer, you can go out and buy corn for how much? For PW. That's pretty cool. So there's less misallocation of resources, less misallocation of resources for a protective subsidy than there is for a tariff. Okay. Now take a look at this though, because this can get confusing. What now happens to the revenue for U.S. producers? Well, I'll tell you what happens. All of a sudden, because the supply curve shift outward to S domestic is pretty straightforward. You can see that, look, hey, this box C now is now representative of what? Of U.S. produced corn and therefore U.S. revenue. But wait, there's more. Because U.S. producers not only get PW, but then the government gives them a handout, basically, a subsidy per bushel of corn. So for every bushel of corn that's produced in the United States, producers get PW plus the subsidy, plus the subsidy, plus the subsidy, plus the subsidy, plus the subsidy. So as a result, these boxes F and G represent the income from the subsidy for U.S. producers. Pretty cool, right? Okay. Then what's left? Well, what about the rest of the corn? Well, the rest of the corn that's sold in the marketplace, where is it coming from? It's coming from international producers. Okay. So as a result of that, D and E are representative of the revenue earned by international producers by selling corn in the United States. Okay, so world revenue went from C plus D plus E to just D plus E. Okay, U.S. revenue went from A plus B before the subsidy to A plus B plus C plus G plus F. Okay, now what about the cost of the subsidy to the government? Well, that is represented by F and G, which we could maybe outline in yellow, like that right there. That's not thick enough. Okay, F and G, whoa, that's thick. Okay, F and G represents the cost of the subsidy to the government. Okay, that's too thick. Hold on. There, F and G, you can see that. Okay, and then we need one more piece of information, which is going to be, what about the welfare loss as a result of the subsidy? Well, here's the thing. Remember that before the subsidy, these people right here are the only people that could produce corn in the United States. What the subsidy did is lower everybody's costs. So now all of these producers, these people here used to be up there, right? But they got the subsidy. So now they can produce corn at the PW price. So there's a welfare loss here of the triangle G. G represents both welfare loss and a portion of the revenue that goes to United States producers. Okay? So there it is. That is the protective subsidy diagram. It's pretty complex. It's pretty cool. But now it's pretty colorful because you can see that what's represented here is all of the revenue gained both before and after the subsidy by both U.S. domestic producers and world producers of corn. Okay, that is ripe with a whole bunch of evaluation, and you can figure that out. You're an economist, right? What does that mean? What does it mean that, if the government's paying a bunch of money for subsidies, what do they have to do? Well, they got to tax something else somewhere else. right? To make up for those funds. There's an opportunity cost of funding corn suppliers as opposed to some other commodity suppliers. And as a result of that, guess what? Political battles, okay? But in terms of understanding the impact of a subsidy on the marketplace as a result of the U.S. protecting its corn producers, you got it. You got it. You got it. And onward we go, my friends, rolling on through our whole unit on free trade and protectionism.